So I'm going to enter this workshop by saying that it's important, I think, to communicate to you at the onset that you're living at a most extraordinary time. It's a most extraordinary time. But the size of what makes it extraordinary is so incredible. And this little drawing here is my way of that we're going to go into, of explaining the many, many forces. That's you in the middle. The many forces that are at play in your life that are changing your life around us and within us as a different consciousness is rising. This mystical, what I call contemporary mystical consciousness, a very different world is rising around us. And it's removing a familiar landscape. Things are changing faster than we can comprehend, and it looks like everything's normal, but it's not. And it's changing so fast while looking the same. But our inner life knows everything's changing, which explains a lot of the panic that we see. Which explains a lot of the kind of, we know things are different, but exactly where and how. Do you know what I'm saying? And for example, one of the parts that I want to go into is that your relationship with time and space is changing. And it has been for some time, and it's not your imagination. Why it's changing and how it's changing is what I want to explain to you. And that's something that I realized through my years of doing medical intuitive readings. That we actually do have a lever in us, a consciousness, through which we create a relationship to time. Time had to be created. It didn't always exist. We created time. And we created kind of a general relationship to this thing we call time. And now we're undergoing this phenomenal transition in which we're recalibrating a relationship to time itself. And we're going to go into that. So we're the first generations that ever hired people that are time managers. Who ever heard of such a thing? There was never such a job ever in the history of ever. And now people actually are time managers. But that's because it's like, where is that? And how many times we'll say, I just don't know, where does the time go? We have phrases now that never existed before. Because we're feeling like, and part of our actual stress in life is watching time slip through our body and play itself out on our face. This is a phenomenon. So, the factors that are at play in our psyche and in our soul are very different than have ever been involved in the human experience before. We are a very different species, ever. But the thing that I have noticed also is that we don't realize how different we are. We absolutely have no appreciation for how much we've changed, how different we are than the people who before the nuclear age, which is the great turning point. We don't have any appreciation for whatsoever that we've entered the age of energy. We get up in the morning and the first thing you do is plug yourself into the energy world. And that all day long you're hooked up to the energetic realm, and that you spend so much of your time in that world that is more real to you than this world now. And we are so much in that world that now in this world, to get us to move our physical matter, we have to hire people, trainers. We have to motivate ourselves to get off the couch. We don't walk anymore, we exercise. We have to reward ourselves for walking an hour with a non-fat soy cappuccino latte fizz thing. But look at the way we are, just to move our matter. Whereas before, nobody ever thought about walking. That's what you did. That's just what you did. But now, it's like a big deal. It's like your walk hour. Because that's not what you do anymore. You're sedentary. You have to bribe yourself to do that. Do you understand? You are now much more in the energy realm than you are in the physical. And no one ever sits back and says, I wonder if there's a consequence for that. That I'm, in fact, dematerizing. I prefer the energy realm to the matter realm. That's actually what's happening. We're more comfortable in the energetics. We're more comfortable with our computer. We're more comfortable with energy relationships. We want to cut time out of that. Look at how people date. They go on Go Fish or whatever that's called, and they say, fill out this form, so I don't have to spend time with you, so I can just cut to the energetics. And I'll spend 3 minutes with you at those. You know, they have these like lunches or things, and you sit in a chair, and you sit in a chair, and you sit in a chair, and you go around, and it's like zzz, no, zzz, no, zzz, no, and they just kind of fast. Who does things like that? But we're doing it now. Okay, so this is like a very curious world that we are living in. We're very different. So there's so much that I want to talk to you about. And in the meantime, the rest of you treats yourself as if it's not happening. Do you understand that? The rest of you goes about as though you're a five-sensory creature. You live your life as though you're totally five-sensory, except when you visit the multisensory world on occasion when you do an intuitive workshop, or when when you're doing something in the world of the energy field, but you don't treat yourself as though you've crossed an energetic Rubicon, and that world is also talking to you full time, all the time. You don't live as though the laws of energy are actually working 24/7 in your life all the time. As though this idea of creating your reality is something that is at work 24/7 while you sleep, and that every choice you make in every single way is in fact actively participating in the creation of your reality, and everyone you know is participating in the creation of your reality. Everyone you know is participating in the creation of your reality, and I bet you don't stop to think about that. Ever. Ever. You think you're the captain of your ship, and you're not. At all. At all. So many times in workshops, I have met women, and it's always women, who've said, I'm trying to decide whether or not to divorce and going through this. And I said, where's your husband this weekend? I don't know. I said, maybe he's at a workshop trying to figure out whether to divorce you. 8 out of 10 women will leave the workshop and go home. And that's probably the best thing in the world that saved their marriage. Because it doesn't occur to them that their husbands are unhappy. Because we so think that we're the center of the universe. And that we are not psychically transparent to other people. We think we're the ones that are able to see clearly, not realizing that in fact you have become energetically transparent to everybody. And this is what I mean by you don't apply the laws to yourself. You think that you're the one that people watch, is never realizing people are people watching you. That everybody in this room, you have already read people's archetypes and they've read you. That you are transparent to every single person in this room. And that if I said, all right, everybody, you're going to do readings on pick a stranger, they could pick you out this quickly. Because you are that attuned. You are now a multi-sensory being. You are not 5 senses. You are multi-sensory. But here's the truth. You don't live that way. You don't live that way. And 80% of your suffering comes from the fact that you don't live that way. You don't treat yourself as a multi-sensory being. You withdraw into your 5 senses. You make your decisions as a 5-sensory being, not relying upon the skills of your intuition, not listening to your intuition, not relying on prayer, not relying on the higher skills of your soul. You retreat into 5 senses. You still look to the past for guidance for your future. There's nothing back there. What's back? There's no such thing as the past. You still make all the same errors that someone who is not on the mystical timeline makes. When in fact, you're on a soul journey, but you don't trust it. Are you with me? Yes. I mean, do you find that you're thirsty here? Yes. I feel like I'm talking and I feel like my throat is drying up. It's an amazing experience. Okay. So we have a lot of work to do this weekend, these few days we're together, because what I want to introduce to you is I want to go through, I want you to picture yourself in the center here, that's little old you. And these are the multiple things that are changing around you and within you that you probably have not sat back and thought. You may have noticed these things changed. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I don't think so. Not at the speed and not with the impact. But your relationship to time and space is changing. And while you may say things like, I feel like time is moving faster, you actually have never sat down and considered that that's a bio-spiritual reality and what that actually means. And we're going to go into that. 2, your ability to, your relationship to creation and survival is changing. And that's a big deal. The relation to creation and survival. Your instinct. Now that changes, and I'm going to go into that. This is all, we'll start this tomorrow, but I have to just tell you where we're going. From the history of forever, the 2 things that make a human being, that have always led human beings, is the capacity to create and the capacity to survive. Always. Always. But from the time we entered the nuclear age, what is true is that we created something more destructive than our capacity to create a means to fight that. We finally have created something that can destroy us, and there's nothing we can create to outdo that. Nothing. Nothing. What that has done is it's morphed us. And it has made it necessary for this to happen. That the only way, there's nothing on the outside we can do, nothing, that can stop the destructive power of the nuclear monster we've created. And from the time we created nuclear weapons, the history of humanity has been the history of chasing that fire that Prometheus stole a second time. Now, I'm going to present you with the view that in fact heaven stepped in and necessitated that the only way we will get through this is that we become incapable of using those weapons. We have to become more conscious and incapable of using the weaponry we have created. Do you get that? Since we can't uncreate that, we have to become incapable of using that. And that is why there is this push that gave birth to the age of consciousness that explains why we're sitting in this hotel today examining our lives, that explains why the interior, why you are interested so deeply in who you are and what you want to do with your life and where you belong and purpose and meaning and what you should be, how you should be of service. Why these questions that are profoundly spiritual questions rest so heavily, deeply, and significantly in you and won't let you go.